So earlier this week, I got sent a message from a student who's in one of my tutorials, and they watched some of my YouTube videos, and their message went along these lines. Hey Samuel, I think I'm starting to realize the difference between just studying and the idea of truly learning. And I really want to be that kind of person who truly learns and doesn't just study to regurgitate information. But it's really hard to find the motivation sometimes to be curious and to care to push through, especially when I'm in my room all alone doing so many units that just don't seem interesting or relevant to me. Do you have any advice for staying motivated when you have to study a topic that just doesn't interest you? And when I read that question for the first time, I thought it was a really interesting question to ask, because it's not the typical type of question that you get that's focused on time management tips or a strategy to be more disciplined or tactics to be more productive. It's actually talking about something a little deeper than that. It's that admission that we've all had at some point, that sometimes we just don't feel like it. And as hard as we try to sit ourselves down, open up that textbook and get to work, sometimes it's really hard to find a reason to truly care. And I thought I'd share one thing I've done throughout my university journey that's helped me take units that I haven't necessarily cared about and given me a reason to care and do the work, even if I don't feel like it. Because even after I've been at university for many years and started a YouTube channel where I talk about the idea of owning your learning, I still feel it too. And anyone who knows me knows that although I am initially really excited and optimistic going into a new semester of university, I find it really hard to stay motivated for an entire semester. In fact, it happened just a couple of weeks ago. So you see, I'm doing this maths subjects as a part of the business half of my degree called Statistics for Business. And it is without a doubt one of the most painful units to study for. Not because it's difficult, but because it's incredibly tedious. Because it kind of feels like the whole subject isn't built around understanding, rather just following some procedures. So every single class is built around finding the right formula, applying the formula, finding up some statistical value in this tedious table, and then writing out the correct steps, finding the right answer, and then repeating the whole process again and again and again. And I think most of all, I just don't see how this subject is relevant to my life. So I kind of showed up to class with a really cynical mindset for the past 7 weeks, to do the least amount of work possible to get the most amount of grades. And it hasn't really been working out that well, because when you show up to a class with the intent of doing as little work as possible, you don't really learn anything. And it's really easy to get in the mindset of saying things like, I have a really bad teacher, or the education system is irrelevant, and not truly take responsibility for your own growth and development as a student. And there was this really funny moment around 1.5 weeks ago where our teacher reminded us that in 2 weeks we would be having a test worth around 25%, assessing the previous 4 weeks worth of content. And that came as a bit of a shock to me, because I realized that if I was made to sit the test that day itself, I would have literally got 0 and failed. And what scared me even more was I didn't even have the motivation, in spite of this, to go home and learn this for myself. A feeling that I eventually realized everyone on my table and the 2 tables next to me shared. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm not the only one. Everyone feels this way. And that's not good. And I was like, I have to do something about this. And so I literally told my table and the 2 tables next to me, let's start a group chat. And then in the group chat, I was like, next Monday, 10 a.m., let's hop on a Zoom, and I will teach you at least 1 out of the 4 topics that we're going to be assessed on in this upcoming test. Which is quite the thing to say, because in order to teach a topic, you actually need to have learnt it first. And I think I might have underestimated the amount of work that was going into this. And so literally, I have spent all my nights in the past week watching lectures and YouTube videos on statistics, doing heaps of practice questions at night, and then during the day, walking my fellow students through those practice questions I've done and attempting to teach them for myself. And so after 10 days of doing this, I went from literally no understanding of the topic to not just understanding it, but being able to explain it to a beginner and having an awareness of literally every question type that our teacher could ask us. And as I said, I completely underestimated the amount of work that went into this, and it was really hard work. But I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Because when I woke up in the morning and I didn't feel like doing the work, I still got on with it and did the work anyway because I knew some students were counting on me. I knew that there was something meaningful holding me accountable. And it really got me thinking about how doing something like that could just switch my mindset from not caring to being willing to put in the work. And I contrasted it to back when I was in school. And when I was in school, I never shared a single insight that I had gained regarding a topic. I never really did collaborative study, or I never really took out time to teach someone else a concept intentionally. And I think it has to do with this scarcity mindset that's just drilled into our minds, that the best thing to do is keep all this information to yourself, keep all your understanding to yourself, and never share it with anyone. But that's actually a complete lie. And you'll realize that when you start teaching people, it's actually the best way to learn. Firstly, because it actually gives you a reason to do the work. You have no idea how much time I have spent contemplating at my desk whether I should study or take a break. And I've spent hours just thinking about whether I should study. But when you have to show up at 1 p.m. tomorrow and teach someone a concept, the decision's already been made. And so you're no longer wasting your time asking yourself, should I study or not? Instead, you're focusing on, how am I going to explain this? How can I communicate this in a simple and concise way that gets the meaning across? And all of a sudden, learning becomes an interesting problem that needs to be solved. And every topic you learn is a new and interesting challenge that's distinct in its own way. And there's purpose behind what you're doing. And when you show up to teach some of your friends, they're going to ask you questions that you had never thought about regarding the topic. And then you realize, oh wow, I actually don't understand this topic as well as I thought I did. And so it forces you to get better at what you do. And that's literally the thing that motivated all the work that went into, me making my physiology notes, or my cell biology notes, or my law notes. We'd be all walking out of a lecture one day, we'd all be confused, and then I'd be like, okay guys, next Monday morning, 10 a.m. in the library, be there, and I'm gonna teach you what this lecture was about. A really foolish thing to say, actually, because most of the time I'd be setting myself an impossible deadline. But what it did was when I got home that night, it gave me a reason to start doing the work. And what's really interesting about this is, and this is true for my entire university journey, after you've started to do the work, that's when the feeling of motivation comes. That's when that insanely deep state of focus, or flow as some people like to call it, comes. That's when you reach very high levels of productivity, after you've started to do the work, not before it. And so what I'm trying to say here is, you can't base your motivation off your feelings in a particular moment. What if you're a brain surgeon someday, and then one morning you just don't feel like it? Are you not going to do your job? What if you're a lawyer and you're in a bad mood? Are you not going to serve your client? Like, what if you're a pilot? Or what if you're a YouTuber and you want to make a video, but on a particular day you just don't feel like it? There's something that just doesn't seem right if we just base the way we act on how we feel. And you see, right now, when you're in school or university, you have the opportunity to develop habits that help you be the person you want to be in the future. And the reason I love teaching as a way of learning is not because I want to go and become a professional teacher in an institution necessarily, but because when I teach, or in the act of preparing to teach and teaching, I feel like I'm developing skills and a mindset that helps me be the person I want to be. I'm learning to solve problems and communicate better. I feel like I'm learning to create connection between myself and the students around me. I feel like I'm being the kind of person who makes a promise and keeps it. I feel like I'm someone who's continually learning and helping those around me learn. And that's something I'm willing to pursue, even if I don't feel like it. And for you, it doesn't have to be teaching, because at the end of the day, you have to find something that's intrinsic and within you that gives you a reason to put in the work. And it can't just be, I want to please my parents, or I want to get good grades, or I want to look cool in front of my friends. No matter how young you are, take some time and ask yourself the question, who's the person I want to be? And be really honest with yourself. And you'll probably have a different answer to me, and that's okay. And then ask yourself, what are the opportunities I have both within and outside of my degree that I could utilize to be that kind of person? And whether that's teaching your friends, solving a problem that everyone else is ignoring, or just taking the initiative to lead and inspire people in a group assignment, You'll be surprised at how much you can learn and develop in spite of how hard things are when you choose to take responsibility to own your learning. And I actually have a great example of something I did in a group assignment last year that I think you guys would love to see and is exactly what this is about. But that'll have to wait till next week, because I think that's enough for today's video. There is quite a lot for you all to think about. It's really easy to go through university and go through a lot of your life without taking the time to reflect and ask yourself these important questions. But I really hope that this video sort of helps you be the kind of person who does ask those questions and thinks introspectively. But yeah, that's all for today's video. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next week.